Do you think you know what beauty is? Would you say you know better than most people? Being a designer forces you to confront these questions and, I would argue, reject two of the most cliché and widely held beliefs society loves to agree on regarding aesthetics. Number 1. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Number 2. You can't judge a book by its cover. I don't think you can truly be a designer whilst regarding any of the previous statements as true. It's arguably your job description to make choices for other people based on your sensibility and your visual culture, which should be more refined than the average person. You should believe you're right about how good something looks, be able to justify your choices, and, if necessary, disregard any uninformed opinion. This topic tends to get quite controversial with people outside or inside the creative field. It's safe to say a degree in physics or medicine will automatically afford you a great amount of credibility by the general public as far as your expertise is concerned. And no sane person would argue against that. However, this privilege is not afforded to designers. I bet that most people wouldn't be comfortable admitting that designers know better as far as beauty is concerned. To these people, yeah, we might get paid to design, but not because we're more capable of making aesthetic choices. I still haven't figured out how to argue about this topic without sounding overly pretentious. And to get to that second statement, well, I really don't know how not to judge a book by its cover when you're the one making the cover. I'm personally still stuck trying to find a solution to this dilemma, and the hundreds and hundreds of design blogs still mad about amateurs using Comic Sans for their wedding invitation in 2023 is a clue that, well, I'm probably not alone. While the underlying debate on who gets to deem something beautiful rages on, the role of designers in our society gets questioned into oblivion. This topic would make for a great video, but do you know what would make for an even better one? What if even us designers couldn't agree on what really is beautiful? That's right, we're so cool now, we're rejecting great video ideas because great is not good enough. Let's talk about anti-design.
Draper. What do we have here? I am here to unbox
Draper,
you.
get your eyes on
This.
The term anti-design, whilst being fairly expressive, is hardly impartial. The idea that some works are negating a set of principles at the core of design is, by definition, rejecting the idea that these works can be considered valid. It gets the point across, but it sidestepped the debate we're focusing on from the outset. What if these works actually were valid? And I mean that literally, the same way a vintage Swiss branding system conceived by Massimo Vignelli in his wildest dreams is considered valid. Writing this script, I'm carefully choosing my words not to sound like a total boomer or analyzing today's trends in visual design. After all, couldn't all this simply be considered graphic design's punk era? And look, I do see the similarities in many ways. The notion that a set of core principles defines the idea we have of a craft is what made punk so controversial back in the mid-70s. How could the Sex Pistols be considered music the same way that the Beatles were? Admitting that kind of product into what was socially accepted as good music seemed to inherently negate the validity of the previous one. I mean, punk was quite literally fabricated to reject the rules, but eventually the system was smart enough to integrate it into itself. The standards simply changed, the core set of principle was expanded upon, and society's notion of what was considered good music got more sophisticated. I don't think many people would argue against this framing. However, I'm not sure if current day's anti-design could be regarded as the new punk movement. And I will argue that's not just because I'm old and I don't get it. Please tell me I'm still cool. It's just that design is already at its punk era. As far as definitions are concerned, most of the works David Carson has put out since the beginning of his career could be considered anti-design. After all, most, if not all, of common design rules are systematically broken in his pieces. no grids, broken hierarchy, fucked up typefaces. His style inspired a whole generation of young designers that expanded upon these ideas and furthered visual culture. Just check out Roy Cranster's or Chris Ashworth's work to see his legacy flourish. And yet, I still think most designers would agree these works are clearly well designed and beautiful in the most technical sense of the word. They're aesthetically pleasing, they were made by someone who knew what they were doing. Yes, most elements are in some way or another fucked, for a lack of a better word, but they're fucked in just the right way. This is what punk has always been to the world of graphic design. The same role brands like Moschino had in fashion, artists like Pablo Picasso had in art, and bands like the Sex Pistols had in music. They set out to make something that defied conventional rules while still preserving the most important quality of all: its beauty. An untalented fashion designer couldn't make clothes like Moschino, a bad artist couldn't paint like Pablo Picasso, and an incompetent band couldn't make music like the Sex Pistols. And that's the most amazing irony behind any punk movement. It is, in many ways, the highest demonstration of mastery in your craft, being able to defy all the rules and still make it work. And not only that, make it appealing. But whilst these people clearly didn't set out to make something ugly, I'm not sure that the same can be said about some designers today. "2021's Spotify Wrapped shook the graphic design community at the core and split it almost in half for some of the bold visual choices made that year. Fluid, distorted typography, broken shape, contrasting colors, but most of all, scratch type. 2021's Wrapped was the flagship achievement of the effort coming from a great crowd of underground designers pushing for new visual ideas to come to the forefront of our world. These creatives, these studios and agencies have been involved in a cultural battle for quite some time. Some big-name players have also moved towards clear examples of what we might call brutalist design lately, and have inspired many young designers to make their voices heard. Former S&W partner Jessica Walsh built her new agency, And Walsh, on an edgier, more unconventional aesthetics, even when it comes to their commercial work. These examples are merely the tip of the iceberg and would be considered mild at best by the stretched type crowd. To understand what I'm talking about, look no further than Fisk or DIA Studios. Their commercial works are built to challenge conventional design standards. The stretched type, the overly saturated palettes, the ugly-ass color pairings. These designs are fucking up everything that's considered sacred about our craft, and they're turning the process into something sellable, actually coveted by many. Don't believe me? Probably the most popular example of this trend has been staring us in the eyes for a while now, especially in the last couple months. I don't think I've been pushed to ask the question, who would buy this, more often than while looking at Demna's work for Balenciaga. His approach to fashion and design truly warrants its own video, but it's easy to see how some of his choices are not simply unconventional. They're outright wrong. I don't think these results can be explained away by talking about taste or cultural background either. It's abundantly clear he's capable of crafting great pieces, and yet, at times it just seems like that's not his aim. And I don't think he would dispute this either. I do believe that's the whole point. Making something ugly, exploring bad taste and its aesthetics is what drives most of his work. These designs are not carefully crafted to break some of the rules and come out on top. They're consciously made to be bad. And I'm starting to believe their makers honestly don't expect people to find them beautiful. To me, it's more about playing on the limits of what's considered acceptable rather than exploring new languages by rejecting the established. And as such, some people see this trend as an ironic take on design. Good designers consciously making something that looks bad to have fun or make fun of the current mainstream system. The same way Tyler the Creator used to dress with trashy clothes to make a statement. I'm so good at what I do that I'll purposely wear something bad just to make a point, just to be ironic. It turns a product that was merely meant to be appreciated and useful into something entertaining. And look, it's conceivable that that's the real reason behind this new wave of anti-design, but as much as I struggle to look for it, I just can't see the irony in some of these works. It's not camp, it's just wrong and not to be entertaining. And that's where I see the disconnect with the punk movement. I never thought I would say this, but in a way they're too wrong to be punk. Integrating this kind of anti-design into what culture considers desirable means something completely different than recognizing the limits of our conventional rules and when these can be bent or broken for the sake of a good result. It means redefining or at least disregarding what good taste means to a society.
We're gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
And that begs the question, what will this design identity crisis lead to? As the trend grows bigger and more brands steer towards this type of aesthetics, us designers are left with a much more demanding task than the one we've always had to bear in regards to our society. What is our role when even we can't agree on what is right? Why are we meaningful, and why should people take us seriously? These questions have always been hard to answer for someone in our position, back when things we made used to look like this. The times changed, the season passed, but this question stuck. Although now that things we make can look like this, I don't think we'll have an easier time finding an adequate answer. We have always struggled and still are struggling to establish our role in society, but don't be fooled by these grand discussions on the state of the art. The real issue lies beneath the surface, where everyday people buy and consume products away from the cultural zeitgeist. If even the upper echelon of design can't agree on what they stand for, what will happen to the lower levels of the creative fields? I mean, Shane has replaced design work with an algorithm as if to show that when the discussion around our craft becomes unimportant, the system is capable of readily eradicating that step out of the equation entirely. And I think that soon we might be called to show that we, as a cultural force, really don't deserve that. Rei Kawakubo, the legendary fashion designer and founder of Comme des Garçons, wrote in her book that there is value in bad taste. And she's probably right. If so, we're here to learn. Thank you.